Hello guys, so in this video we're gonna try to explain the fever mechanism. So first of all, we should know there's a reason which has started all of this reaction in our body. So first of all, an example is like bacteria, or there is something like trauma or something in our body which is damaged, which leads, this is the first thing which leads to fever. It will activate something that's called primary. It's not activated, it's just the primary bioregions, which is substances. By the way, you have to open the book if you have, so you can follow along, and it's gonna be much easier for you, to understand. So for better understanding, bring your book and follow me. So from the primary, it leads to activate the secondary bioregion. Of course, there's between the primary and secondary, there is one step. If you mention it, it's good. If you forget or something, just say primary and then secondary bioregion. Which is between is something like activation of the macrophages. We had in the inflammation mechanism, that is activation of the macrophages to do the reaction. So if you remember to pronounce this one is good. If you couldn't remember, so just use from primary then secondary bioregion. After that, what's gonna happen? The part which is responsible for the fever is hypothalamus, as we learned in physiology. So there is COX, activation of the COX in the hypothalamus. So from the secondary, there is activation of the COX in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the center of that, of the fever. So after that, it leads to something, it's called prostaglandin, BGE2. This is prostaglandin activation. For this one, this is something important I'm gonna mention in the end of the in our discussion. And then leads to something increase of the CAMP, or activation of the CAMP, and that leads to two direction. First of all, something is called heat loss and heat production. That leads to the fever. So we want to lead to something to the fever. So the heat loss, of course, it will decrease, and the heat production increase. Our body produce more heat. That means fever. So I'm gonna recap everything really quick. We need something from outside to start this reaction. Bacteria, maybe viruses, some parasite, trauma or something extra, injury or something. Anyway, it will lead us to activation of the primary bioregions, which is substances, which leads to activation of the secondary bioregion. I told you there is between them there's something, it's called activation of the macrophages, because inflammation. If you can remember this, so it's good for better mark. And then after the secondary bioregion, it leads to activation of the COX in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the part in our brain, and that leads to activation of the prostaglandin, and then increase of the CAMP leads to the heat loss that we have in our body, which is decrease, going down, and our body start produce more heat. That leads us to the fever. So I need to mention for treatment of the fever, something is called the aspirin. How the aspirin can, this is aspirin mechanism. I'm gonna explain it here, and also I'm gonna maybe do it in I don't know, just a separate video. Anyway, so the aspirant leads to deactivate the COX. So if the COX deactivate, it will decrease the prostaglandin. So decrease of prostaglandin. And if the prostaglandin decreased, so that leads to decrease of the heat production, which is treatment of the fever. And that's all for the fever mechanism. I hope it's, I don't know, I hope it's much easier now for you to understand the mechanism. And if there's something I can explain for you more, just, in the comment below, just tell me. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you all the best.